You are listening to the Tricorder Transmissions
Weekly Trek,
episode 25.
Welcome to Weekly Trek, your roundup of everything Star Trek that happened this week. Major updates, new merch, Section 31 caliber fan speculation. Whether you were abducted by the Obsidian Order or hiding from the Tal Shiar and missed out on all the Trek news this week, no worries. Weekly Trek is here to catch you up. I am with Shashank, and we are here to bring you Weekly Trek. What are we talking about this week, my man?
So happy to have you, John. This week we are talking about reviews of some incredible merch that got out in the last couple of weeks. We have a slew of season 2 interviews with Ethan Peck, Mary Wiseman, Sinead Martin Green. We have Carl Urban giving us an update on season 4. And finally, some more exciting news about Discovery season 2. Some old aliens might be coming back. That's pretty exciting. And before we get out of here, we'll just give out a feeler on what we left behind and how excited we are for it. I'm excited to get this started with you, man.
Perfect. And I, of course, didn't introduce myself. How ridiculous of me. I am John, host of the Trek Profiles podcast right here on Tricorder Transmissions Network. And with me is the incredibly amazing and totally wonderful and overly enthusiastic, which I admire greatly, Shashank Avaro. So let us go ahead and jump right into story number 1. We have the Commander Saru mini bust coming out this week. It looks really beautiful. Are you going to buy one, Shashank?
Yes, this month I have decided not to have any groceries at home. I'm just going to survive on peanut butter and crackers for the rest of the month because I have spent so much money on Star Trek merch and they just keep making it. I keep buying it. This is beautiful. And as the article that we are looking at, which is a review on Trek Core, suggests it's 7 inches tall. It's shown in a contemplative pose. He has his fingers steepled. And it's a very cool bust. It cuts off right just a little after his torso, and it looks like a beautiful bust. And the way they placed it in these pictures too, right above their books, it looks like a great addition to a bookshelf, an office desk. And I'll get into a little more detail about some of the complications with something like this. But overall, what did you think, John? Is this something you've enjoyed looking at? Will you be buying it yourself?
I will not, but that's only because I am not really a collector of stuff. Believe it or not, for a lifelong Star Trek fan, I have very, very little Star Trek stuff that I've collected. I mean, I've got some uniforms and things, but when it comes to items, I have some books, I've got DVDs, but I don't collect a lot of stuff like statues and plates. That plates were really big at one time. Models or ships. I don't. All that I have could fit in maybe 3 regular shoeboxes. And that's mostly stuff I've gotten at conventions. So I don't have all that much. So I would not be buying this only because I tend not to buy these things because they just collect dust for me. I don't really get a lot of joy out of them. But for folks who do enjoy this kind of thing, and if this is your thing, this is a beautiful piece coming in at $100. And apparently it's just one in a series. They're going to be making some more of these things. They're also going to be making the Klingon Torchbearer, which I think will be beautiful because that was a really elaborate costume, Shashank. I mean, did you get to see it close up when it was at STLV, I think, last year?
I did. And actually, the Klingon Torchbearer and the Burnham in a spacesuit are out. They were the first ones that got released from Gentle Giant. They're the busts that came out before this one. And when I said complications, the thing is, when you announce something as detailed as these are bound to run into delays. And I believe this was announced a little while ago. Not the Saru bust, but the Torchbearer and the jumpsuit. And they've been out there for a while, and people have been expecting them for a while. So it's good that they're finally out. And it's amazing that we have such detailed merch. I know you're not a collector, but for those of us who don't like any space in our houses and we just want to bury ourselves in space stuff, this is beautiful. And I'm so glad we got this. One caveat, I think they announced it as an STCC exclusive, but it's already available on their website. So that's pretty cool too.
Very, very nice. Yeah. So I got the timeline wrong on that one. Well, thank you. You were there to correct me on that one. So I appreciate you, John. But
you know what else I'm here for is to give you some more updates on some more nerdy stuff that you don't collect.
Yes.
This one's dedicated to our tricorder resident spaceship collector Barry DeFord, who's my co-host on WeeklyTrek. When we went to a stable, he could not stop himself from buying every possible ship that was out there at Eagle Moss. So he'll be excited for this one. But they came out with another line of Excel ships, which is just even more detailed. It's a little bigger than their usual spaceships, and the ones that they seem to be getting out of the gate with this time is a 1701C that has an Excel model out now. They've also put up some prototypes of the Kelvin timeline shuttles. That's pretty cool, and I'm really excited about this Q-class Klingon destroyer, or I guess it's her class. QUGH. I don't exactly know how to pronounce it, but it looks beautiful. So this is from Trekker. They have a bunch of pictures, fun stuff to look at. What do you think, John?
The thing that I find most exciting is the space dock, which I just think is beautiful. So they have the space dock from Star Trek 3, which I think is just fantastic. And the thing that I think would be most amazingly cool, it doesn't look like they have this, but if they just had a little starship coming out of the space doors, I think I would actually have been tempted. But just incredibly beautiful stuff Eagle Moss does. And I will say, that is the one representation of Trek at my work is on my desk, which is all very basic stuff, that I would have in an office. The only Star Trek thing I have on my desk is a little Eagle Moss Enterprise, and the Enterprise is watching guard over my desk in case any Klingons try to steal any of my staplers or anything. So that's the one thing I have as an Eagle Moss ship. So there you go. So take that as an endorsement. So love Eagle Moss and love their stuff.
As a fellow Battlestar Galactica fan, you'll appreciate that they also do all the Battlestar Galactica ships. I believe they have Pegasus, they have Galactica, they have a bunch of other ships. They have a Cylon Raider. They have pretty cool stuff there. Just one thing to note, the pictures that we saw of the space dock are apparently not final yet, and they might actually change something. So who knows, we might get that tiny starship. Or you could seek out some of the smaller spaceships within the Eagle Moss collection and make your own diorama with that, replicating that image, John.
Oh, yeah, there you go, right? Although I think in the scale, I think a ship that would be flying into the space dock would literally be the size of a pea. So I don't know, but it looks like a great model. And if you're a collector of any of that stuff, Eagle Moss is definitely the place to go. They just have the most fantastic stuff. So super excited about that. But enough about the collecting. Let's talk about some of the stories we have coming out about some of the actors in the amazing Star Trek Discovery show. There was an article here about Ethan Peck and Anson Mount talking about Discovery's new Spock. Before we even talk about this, I just want to say that whether you like Discovery or even if you're some kind of, hater of the show, I think that it is without question that these cast members have just been so positive and so wonderful to deal with. And you just feel how excited they are to be part of the show. And, whatever you think of Discovery, I don't think you can criticize the people on the staff and the people who are acting in the show just for the way that they've really embraced being part of Star Trek. I just find it really gratifying and wonderful. And I just feel like it adds so much to our enjoyment of Star Trek to have the talent be as involved as they are in social media and to be so genuine and excited about being part of the show. So it was really exciting for me to see. How about you?
Well, before I even read the interview, I came in heartened, especially with the trailers that have been coming out, all the promo material, and the fact that both of these actors are playing legacy characters. One of them is playing more or less minor character from a couple of episodes, and the other is playing arguably Star Trek's most famous character, and yet they're both endorsed by the family that these actors come from. I know Jeffrey Hunter's son went and visited Mount, and they have a picture together on his Twitter. I also know that the entire family of Nimoy endorsed Ethan Peck. So just very heartening and positive, and all around support for the characters as they go in, which leads me to when they ask questions like, within the interview, they go into detail, the Trek core staff about, hey, so what's one of your favorite things about playing the Spock character? Was asked to Ethan, and he said the freedom to invent his past in a way, both emotionally and logically. See, that seems like a minefield potentially, but that he has the endorsement and the support of everybody coming in is great. So I'm excited to see I'm excited to learn more about a character who I thought I already knew everything about. So just those kinds of questions got me in. I like their preparation methods. Anything stand out to you in this interview, John?
The thing that struck me was that it seems like there's some sort of relationship, a real kind of a friendship between Pike and Spock, that we don't really know what it's going to be yet. We don't know how much of the dynamic is captain versus first officer and how much of it is a friendship, but it appears like they actually have a friendly, as much as a Vulcan could allow such a thing, I would say, some kind of friendly relationship that we're going to find out more about. And Ethan and Mount kind of hint at that. And I think that that's going to be really nice to see. I'm curious to see how it develops. And I'm looking forward to seeing their portrayals. I think it's going to add a lot to the franchise. I think it's going to add a lot to the show. So I'm excited.
Let me ask you this. Do you think these guys will be regulars going forward, or is this just a one season appearance? Because if you remember in the cage and subsequently when we see Pike come back on the original series, their relationship is so deep and strong that Spock is ready to violate Starfleet rules for him. He's ready to get banned from Starfleet when he does what he does on the episode. So it seems like at some point we need to find out where that loyalty came from, apart from just the words. So what do you think? Do you think these guys will be staying, or is this just a guest role? What are you getting from it?
It's very hard for me to answer that question, because one of my preferences in watching Star Trek and in watching all of science fiction, I would say, is anytime you're in any kind of show that's in outer space, you have to remember that space is big. And it's always a little bit disappointing to me when you're out in the middle of space and you keep running into people that you know, and the same ship over and over again. So at the end of season 1, I was like, oh, of course it's the Enterprise. I roll. I mean, that was my reaction. I would have been totally happy had it been some other ship, some other Constitution class ship. But I think, of course they're going to run into the Enterprise, right? While they were out in the middle of the boonies somewhere, right? And it's just very, I just, in the vastness of space, it's just hard to get my head wrapped around the fact that we just keep running into the same people. So I kind of always want there to be something new. And that's sort of my preference for these things. Not that, I'm upset that they're bringing back Spock or Pike. I don't mind that, but it's just weird to me how they keep running into the same people. So having said that, I think that Anson Mount and Ethan Peck are probably locked in for the season to be in a certain number of episodes. I consider it an open question if we're going to see them in a season 3. How about you?
Well, I'm just openly agnostic at this point about the whole thing. I'll be okay either way. I trust the storytelling. Unlike your reaction, I was excited when it was the Enterprise. That made sense to me. It felt like where the franchise had come now is now going to stand up and reflect on what the franchise was when it started. So it seemed like a really good coming around of sorts. But if you were kind of eye-rolling, I have another interview to talk about with you from the new amazing actors in Discovery, Doug Jones and Mary Wiseman. Continuing that same round of interviews from New York Comic Con, Trek movie this time went out, and they found them and they asked them a host of questions. We get a lot more about season 2. It's exciting that we get to see a Kelpian torso. I'm excited to see that. Saru, as we just talked about, that'll be a cool bust for sure. Seeing him in all his Kelpian glory, and it's certainly interesting that they say the storytelling will be a bit more episodic and they mentioned the 7 signals specifically. So a lot of stuff to take away here. They're both doing their own short treks. Runaway is already out. The Brightest Star, I believe, will be coming out December 6th. So they talk about that a little bit. What do you think of this interview, John?
I am just totally enamored with the both of them. I think that Doug Jones and Mary Wiseman, in different ways, are really incredible acting talents. And I think that Star Trek is fortunate to have 2 such incredibly gifted people contributing their talents to the show. And for instance, in the Runaway short treks, the comedic acting talent of Mary Wiseman just must be acknowledged. She really is just stellar. And Doug Jones, his ability to act and emote under all those prosthetics and the physical command he has of his own body and the way that he brings that physicality to Saru as an alien, it's really just something that should be honored. So we're fortunate to have them. Having said that, going into the article, I mean, they're talking a little bit about, as much as they can talk about what's coming. I'm really excited to see Saru's short trek, because the one thing I knew right from the beginning of season 1 of Discovery, when he was talking about his home planet, was at some point we're going to get to see it. And I just couldn't imagine what the predators on that planet would look like and how they would be, because we've seen what Saru can do. And if they're the prey species, the hunter species has to be just beyond crazy. So I'm really excited for something exciting and really, really just pulse driving to come to us from that particular short trek. So I think it's going to be exciting. The part that I think is interesting is Saru getting the captaincy for all of 5 minutes before it's taken away from him. So I'm interested to see how they actually portray that on the screen, and how much of his interior, if there's going to be any focus on his interior struggle as part of that. How about you?
I am definitely more interested in the brightest star shot for sure, more than Runaway, just as an outside, because I know after having seen Runaway that, even she mentions it, Mary does in the interview, that it really doesn't affect most of the show. But I think the brightest star does take us back to Saru's homeworld. So just story-wise, I think there is more meat there. But absolutely, I'm really surprised that Mary Wiseman has no stand-up background, or she doesn't have a comedic background. She's just a really good actress, but I'm excited to see more of her comedy. I think one of the highlights of season 1 is just how hilarious she is. That scene where she goes, hey, what the hell? Hold your horses, is one of the funniest moments in Star Trek to me. And just so much more coming. I'm excited altogether. Of course, there's nothing here that makes me, but before we get out of this interview, I really would like to know, what are your theories about the 7 signals? Do you have any at this point? What are you thinking that could be connected to? I know we talked about it a little bit of it on our Slack. I really would like to know, do you have anything at this point? I know you always come up with interesting theories, so I'm excited to hear.
Oh, way to go. Putting me on the spot there, Shashank. I've seen interesting fan speculation. There's theories that it has something to do with Iconians. There's another theory about Romulans, which I don't subscribe to at all. There's another theory, which I think I shared with you, about some sort of Hindu imagery in some of the things that we've seen. And we know that there's going to be this religious influence, something on science versus faith. So I just think it's something that's going to be challenging these people about their fundamental beliefs in how the universe works. And I think that last season, it was very much about existential threats to the Federation, about their extermination and, what kinds of things they might do to survive. This one might be a little bit more mental and a little bit more metaphysical than actual. So it might not be a physical threat. It might be more of a threat to their thoughts about how the universe is ordered. So hoping that it has some good intellectually challenging stuff and really good storytelling, and I'm excited to see where it goes.
Yeah, I think it connects directly to the mission that Spock is on. And I think it's the quest that he's trying to figure out is what is going on with these 7 signals. I think they allude to it in one of the trailers too. I really would like all of it to connect to the Great Bird of the Galaxy, which is a really cool find by one of our wonderful friends in our community, Alex Perry, who was telling me about this. And it's apparently the bird that birthed the galaxy. It has a really cool mythology around it. I hope it adds to the overall story. It seems, you're right, it seems like a really heady, very high concept thread, which is a welcome change from people fighting each other in the mirrored universe. Not that I didn't enjoy that. So yeah, good stuff all around. And not to be outdone, we have one more cool interview, don't we, John?
I just got to say that one other thing though, which is I was familiar with Mary Wiseman before it was announced that she was going to be part of Star Trek Discovery. She was on a show called Baskets, which was a comedy show. It's a dramedy, I guess you would call it, and it was on FX, I want to say. And she played a street clown named Trinity with Zach Galifianakis. And she was like this. She was a horrible, sort of terribly inept street clown. And her comedic ability was clear evidence then. And I really just enjoyed her performance. And so I knew all about who she was from that before she was even put into Discovery. And when they announced that she was going to be in Discovery, I have to admit my eyebrows went up in a very Spock-like way. And all I could think was, now that's interesting, because she was very clearly an actress with a very high comedic ability. And I was thinking, how are they going to use this? Because that's not normally that's not something we normally see in Star Trek, is like a full-on comedy type character. But certainly they brought her in, and they're using her to the best of her ability as Tilly, and I think it's wonderful. So
one can only hope that they do listen to her and respect her wishes and give her that love story with the ball of gas that she was referring to at STLV.
Absolutely. So let's talk about this Sonequa Martin Green article. So here we have, again, from New York Comic Con, another interview. And the big thing that she was asked about is, how come Spock never mentioned Michael, right? And how come Spock never mentioned Sybok, by the way? And how come Spock never mentioned his parents before Journey to Babel, right? He loves to hold back, apparently. So there's a long and glorious history of Spock not telling us about things. But it looks like there's going to be a real reason that's going to be given to us as to why there's a break and why she's not mentioned. And, this, I just want to point out that there's a long history of this in a lot of other television shows. I mean, if you just want to take another example from something that's happening right now, is we had Breaking Bad, which was on TV for a long time with the amazing Bob Odenkirk as Saul Goodman. And now we have Better Call Saul, where he has this other character that's Kim Wexler, who's a major part of his life, and she is not ever mentioned or referred to at all in Breaking Bad, right? And it's like, well, whatever happened to her? How come she was never mentioned, right? How come he never talks about her? And we're going to see that play out and why that was. So this kind of thing happens in TV all the time with prequels, and I think it's okay. So I'm excited to see what reason they package up and give to us for this. And I hope that it's emotionally interesting. And I hope that it's something that is emotionally satisfying and it helps us understand Spock a little bit better. How about you?
The highlight of the interview for me was the redemption arc that she talks about, that Burnham is going to continue on that arc, and we're going to see her carry that guilt through and work through it, because as she talks about, carrying the murder of her parents on your conscience is a pretty big thing to carry. And being in the position that she is, in the conflict that she is as someone who is going through that ultimate nature versus nurture battle within herself, I really, really am enjoying that that aspect of how she looks at the character. They say to make really good fiction, you have to make your character suffer. I feel like her suffering is not at an end, but it's good to know that she'll have some family to help her through this at this point. As we know, the things with Sarek didn't exactly work out. You get to find out some sad things about season 1 within their relationship. So it's hard to think that Spock's there to help her through this, but I'm definitely excited to see her continue that redemption. And as she ends the interview on a question of where would you like to see Michael Burnham at the end of season 2, she talks about how she likes for Michael to be in a place of true self-love, which is the best I can hope for that character. But what did you think of her reaction to talking about Mirror Giorgio? I know you're not, you have some reservations about the overextended use of the mirror universe. Do you think this is a good turn of phrase?
I always say the mirror universe to me is like wasabi, right? A little touch of it enhances the dish, too much and it overpowers the dish, right? So I prefer the mirror universe in small doses. I don't dislike it. I want to see what happens to our characters. And when you have a show that gives you a lot of mirror universe characters, those are people I have less of a time, I have less interest in, because they're not us. They're not our people, right? It's these murderous people from the mirror universe, and I have less interest in them than I do in our characters. And I want to see our characters overcome challenges, and I want to see our heroes become better people. And I don't think that that's something that's necessarily in the cards for the mirror universe characters. So, but I think that she could be, she being Michelle Yeoh's Mirror Georgiou, I think that she could be a really good mirror for Burnham, and really a foil for her in a way, for Burnham to measure her own life and desires and actions, and to choose differently based on what she sees in Giorgio. I think there could be an interesting dynamic there if they play it right. So I'm excited to see what they do, and I'm jazzed.
Before we get out of this one, I would like to just support what John is saying about the mirrored universe. And not just that, but even in just the weekly trek that we just got through, we talked about 3 characters that are basically either from the mirrored universe or are legacy characters. And then we talked about 3 characters that are from the Discovery and actual members of the fleet of Discovery. And I think the biggest challenge, the things that people will be most watching out for on season 2 is how good they are at the balancing act. Because if you start counting, what do they have? Already half a dozen members that are on Discovery. Then you have the Klingons. Then you have these characters that have come in. And then you have Tig Notaro's character. We don't know what she is doing yet. So that's, if you put all of that together, that's a handful of people to run an entire season on, show arcs that begin and end, and tie it off in a neat little bow. That is going to be a big challenge and a great balancing act, right?
Oh, yeah, I think so. So hopefully we're in for an exciting ride on season 2. And speaking of characters in season 2, we had another casting announcement. Creature actor Javier Botet, or Botet, I'm not sure how to pronounce his name, is going to be playing a quote-unquote old alien in Star Trek Discovery. So this guy is very tall, very thin, very lanky. He is very similar, I would guess, in physique to Doug Jones. He's a similar physical type. And while they haven't announced exactly what he's going to be doing, I think it's certainly possible he could be playing a Kelpian of some kind, perhaps a relative of Saru's, perhaps Saru's parent. Or there's another guess that he might be playing a Telosian. I sort of discount that. So I'll be curious to see what you think, Shashank. But back in the original series, the Telosians were females that they then had dressed up in a certain way to appear male because they felt that gave them an interesting physicality that was very alien, and I thought that was really cool. And they all seem to be quite short, whereas this fellow seems to be quite tall. So I guess they could be trying to break the mold and do something very different if he does end up being a Telosian. Or he could be a Kelpian, or he could be something totally else, something totally we haven't seen yet, which is also possible. What do you think?
Great points. I really do see that Doug Jones similarity, especially in the article that we're reading from Trek Movie. They pulled out a photo from the Hollywood Reporter, and he is a stand-in for Doug Jones with those long, lanky legs and just that really, really bony frame. He looks a lot like Doug Jones. So, yep, you're right on that count. I don't think it's a Telosian either, because apart from the short stature, the characters had big heads. That was one of their standout characteristics, is that they had these big heads that were moving and they were communicating when they talked. Their heads moved or moved within itself. I don't think this is someone I see doing that. And even if they're reinventing it, I don't see someone so lean and bony taking on that role. Hear me out on this. My theory is this is not a Kelpian, but either maybe they'll let that be your last battlefield on us and show that the predator species also is very similar to the Kelpians, but they've moved on to an evolved stature that leads them to eat the Kelpians, or it's some 2 species that started out together and eventually one of them became the predator, one of them became the prey. Because at this point we're all expecting, I really would like them to be the Gorn, but that's the TOS nerd in me. But I'm expecting them to be really physically imposing, terrifying, making the Kelpians run when we see them giant, maybe not giant, but big imposing monsters. Maybe they'll surprise us by giving us a really bony, almost similar looking aliens that to the point when we see them, we'll be really surprised and go, wait, these are what the Kelpians are afraid of? And then you see what they do. Maybe that's just me. Again, that's why we do the Section 31 fan speculation on this show. But am I completely off the ship on this?
Well, the one thing I want to say is you mentioned the Gorn, and of course the original Gorn, Bobby Clark, it was a guy in a suit, right, running around Vasquez Rocks. And then we had an Enterprise, we had a Gorn, although they didn't know that it was a Gorn, but that was an entirely CG creature. And while you can like or dislike the episode that he was in, it was certainly clear that I don't think the CG was really up to snuff on that. I don't think he looked particularly good in the episode. And so I do think that if they were to bring back Gorns in any way, I don't think it would be a guy in a suit. I think it would be another iteration of a CG character, just like they did with the tardigrade. And it would be something completely different. So I don't see this guy having anything to do with a Gorn.
Noted. Well noted. I think that's all the season 2 news we have. Moving on to another, maybe still running part of the franchise, the Kelvin timeline. We don't know what is going on there, and neither does Carl Urban. We have an article from Trek Movie in which Carl Urban doing a promo event at New York Comic Con for his new superhero series, The Boys, which, by the way, is a really good comic. I recommend people go read it. It's a fun comic. It reimagines them in this really cool, interesting way that you never thought you could see superheroes in. It's done by Garth Ennis, the guy who reinvented Punisher, and he's well known for Preacher too. He's a guy who created Preacher. But he just said a couple of lines, and this is all that he knows. He says, "I know nothing about Star Trek. I wish I did. No news." Apparently, there is no news. Now, this comes on the heel of Chris Pine at that one interview saying, "Oh, I would love to be back in it. I would love to be involved in it." So where does that leave Carl Urban? Where does that leave the cast? And more importantly, where does that leave Into Darkness nerds like me, John?
Well, I think it's just a matter of business negotiations. There's things going on behind the scenes that we won't know. And, I have never worked in entertainment, but I've worked in corporate America long enough to know that the wheels turn, but they turn slowly and they turn out of sight. So I'm sure that there's meetings in boardrooms, there's production meetings happening at the studio. I'm sure that there's talking to agents, but they don't tell the actors things until they actually have to have something to tell them. So I'm sure things are happening, but we're not in a position to know what they are. So just sit back, relax, enjoy Discovery, and when something happens that we can know about, we'll know about it and we'll go from there. I'm pretty sanguine about it.
Well, something did happen. Maybe not in Kelvin timeline. A lot happened in Discovery, but DS9 made a big comeback. What We Left Behind was released, I believe, to a rousing premiere on October 12th. Did you catch all the tweets and the fun photos that we had from the cast? What do you think this is going to be like? Are you excited to see the documentary? What are your thoughts on it, John?
Oh, I was a supporter of the documentary, so I'm eagerly awaiting my Blu-ray copy to be mailed to me when it's ready. Now, it's my understanding that it wasn't quite ready. There's still parts of it that they're working on. I think some HD remastering that they're still doing, but they did show a version of the film last night in LA, or the night before in LA. And a lot of the Star Trek LA away team was there. And it was really nice because I'm in that group, and it was really nice to see the pictures of everyone dressed up in their Star Trek finery, going down to Paramount and seeing it. And I was just so happy for all of them to have that experience and to be a part of it. And I believe they're also going to be screening it at the Star Trek convention that's upcoming in Birmingham, so over in the UK. And so a lot of our European and UK friends are getting a chance to see it as well. So I'm super jazzed for all of them. And I look forward to hearing their reports about it and hearing what they have to say about it online. But it was just so soon as we record this that we just didn't get a chance for a lot of feedback or hot takes yet. But I look forward to finding out more. How about you?
Everything that you just said, just nerdier. I'm excited.
Shashank, now with 50% more nerd.
Just another little addition. They also released an HD image, an animated image of what Deep Space Nine Season 8 would have looked like. I don't know if you got to see that, but I saw it on comicbook.com a while ago. It's a very interesting image about what Ezri Dax would have looked like. So I'm excited to see that full footage, what they're really doing with that part of the documentary on what they wanted Season 8 to be like. And it kind of disappointed that Avery Brooks wasn't there at the premiere. I understand that he has kind of signed off on public appearances. I understand it. But the fanboy in me and Barry, we were actually expecting him to make a surprise appearance after the Far Beyond the Stars showing, but I guess that says something we'll just keep hoping for the rest of our lives. But other than that, I loved the cast photos. I loved how excited everybody was. I don't think Nana Visited was there. She said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I don't think Terry Farrell was there. I believe she's going to be catching it in Birmingham."
She had a family thing that she put something on it about Twitter. Her son was involved in something that she had to go see, which you can't fault people for that.
Absolutely. And the cool thing is they're taking it on the road, which is great because these guys, after all the hard work they put in, they need to make some profit off of it. They need to get more people to see it. And while a Blu-ray is great, I'm sure you would also have appreciated a chance to get to see it on a big screen. So I'm glad people who are attending some of the conventions are going to get to see it. So positive thoughts all around. Maybe next week on our weekly trek, we'll have a review or some more info to share about this, but that's all the news we have. John, where can people find you?
They can find me at Trek Profiles, which is my show account, which is pretty much focused on Star Trek and a little bit of other fandom here and there, a little bit of Babylon 5, a little bit of Battlestar, but pretty much fandom focused. And so you can find me there on Twitter and Facebook and everywhere else. And if you want to follow my personal account, which is whatever goes, that's at JKNLV on the Twitter. How about you, Shashank?
You can find the podcast I do on the Tricorder Network called WeeklyTrek, which is a political/social fusion of the real world and Star Trek. We get really deep and hopefully really, really insightful about how things in the real world connect to Star Trek and vice versa. We just began our continuation of the Section 25 series, which is what we're doing to celebrate the 25th anniversary of DS9. So more episodes on that coming back. Stay tuned. If people want to find me personally, I only do Twitter. I'm on @gutter_hero. That's GUTTER_HERO. I love talking Star Trek, comics, anything nerdy. Show me your action figures. Show me your busts. I meant action figure busts. And
we're totally leaving that in, by the way. I'm not editing it out, just so we're clear.
I wouldn't expect anything less. But that's all while we try to reel back from this awkwardness, that's all the news we have on Weekly Trek. Until next week, live long and prosper.
Live long and prosper, my peeps.